Jack Cafferty's here with the Cafferty File Check.
Wolf, 2 weeks from today, we'll know the answer to this. But as of this moment, Ron Paul is the odds-on favorite to win the Iowa caucuses. And that has many mainstream Republicans positively apoplectic. Despite being largely ignored by the mainstream media, the 76-year-old Texas congressman is at or near the top of virtually all the polls in the state of Iowa as we enter the home stretch in the first 2012 race for the White House. What's refreshing is that Ron Paul's done it the old-fashioned way, with a consistent message and the best outreach operation in the state of Iowa. Andrew Sullivan writes for the Daily Beast that Ron Paul is generating enthusiasm and support among young voters and Democrats and independents. In other words, voters who could actually help the Republicans beat President Obama next November. Now, you'd think that is just what the Republican Party is looking for, somebody who can beat Obama next November. When it comes to Ron Paul, though, not so fast. Republicans are already set to spin a Ron Paul victory in Iowa by basically ignoring it. Iowa's governor is out saying they'll focus on who comes in second or third. A Washington Examiner column by Timothy Carney suggests the primary contest will get downright ugly if Ron Paul wins Iowa. Carney points to Pat Buchanan's New Hampshire victory in 1996, where both the Republican establishment and the mainstream media rallied to crush his campaign. Carney says if Paul wins, his critics will imply that he's a racist or a kook or a conspiracy theorist, his quotes. Whether the GOP establishment likes it or not, Ron Paul has the power to really shake things up if he wins Iowa. People in Iowa are rallying around someone who, for the first time in a long time, represents real change. Real change. And that has to scare the hell out of both parties. Here's the question. What will happen to the Republican field if Ron Paul wins the Iowa caucuses? Go to CNN.com/Cafferty File, post a comment on my blog, or go to our post on the Situation Room's Facebook page. Wolf?
It'll shake things up a little bit. There's no doubt about that, Jack.
Big time.
All right, thanks very much. Mary Snow's monitoring. Jack's back with the Cafferty File Check.
Question this hour, Wolf, is what's going to happen to the Republican field if Ron Paul wins the Iowa caucuses 2 weeks from today? Larry in Florida writes, I'm from Lake Mary, Florida. If Dr. Paul wins Iowa, I'll be on a plane the next day to New Hampshire to help him campaign in his final days before the primary there. I never really enjoyed politics before I heard about Ron Paul. I always thought it was an insult to vote for the lesser of two evils. But since he's come around, I feel a sense of appreciation for our country that I haven't felt in quite some time. Mark in Arizona writes, nothing will happen. A win in Iowa doesn't seem to mean much historically, and the majority of Republicans say they won't vote for him anyway. It's going to be Romney or Gingrich, a lose-lose situation. BJ in Illinois writes, Americans will grow stronger in what they used to believe in. Tom writes, if Ron Paul wins the Iowa caucuses, it will most likely be portrayed as unimportant by the mainstream media and many Republican officials. Hopefully, the American people will be able to see through this cloud of propaganda and realize that Ron Paul is actually electable. Dave in Ohio writes, Republican leaders and political analysts will write off Iowa. The focus will be on Romney or Gingrich in second place. Let's be perfectly clear here. Republican leaders don't want Ron Paul as their nominee. If Ron Paul is not the nominee, 10% of the GOP base won't support the GOP nominee. And if he should run as a third-party candidate, they might lose more than 10%. It's beginning to look like the Ron Paul divide in the Republican Party, regardless of what the party wants. It'll eventually give Obama a second term, and the Republicans have nobody to blame but themselves. And David finally writes in Virginia, they'll all go to New Hampshire where voters don't know who Ron Paul is. Meanwhile, back at Republican National Committee headquarters, Valium and Maalox martinis will abound, and the White House will begin picking out the bunting for the inaugural podium. If you want to read more about this, got a lot of email. We always do when we talked about Ron Paul. Go to my blog, CNN.com/Cafferty File, or through our post on the Situation Room's Facebook page. Wolf?
All right, Jack, thank you.